This is my roundup for the Manga Madness Readathon Round 7, which was held August 3rd to August 11th, 2019. And I'll be going through the different books that I read for it. The first book that I read for this readathon was Candy Colour Paradox by Isaku Natsume, Volume 1. I already read Volume 1 this year, but I wanted to reread it to refresh in my mind the story in preparation for reading Volume 2, which came in the post. It came on the post on the 1st of August, which is 801 Day or Yaoi Day, very appropriate. On the cover you can see the two main characters, Satoshi Onoe and Motoharu Kaburagi. They're both investigative journalists who get teamed up to work with each other, much to the disgust of Onoe, who dislikes Kaburagi immensely, mainly due to a misunderstanding, of course, very much a trope in this genre. They have opposite personalities, so they're often at loggerheads. However, as they work together and go on stakeouts and are in close confinement, they form a bond and romance ensues. Volume 2 is really much more of the same, with the inclusion of Kaburagi's sister causing an element of jealousy, and that's kind of expected. However, it is Isaku Natsume's comedy that really shines through in this series. I'm really loving it and looking forward to the next volume. I love Isaku Natsume, she's one of my favourite authors, and I hope that more of her works will be translated and published in English. The next title I read is Eli Mamahara's Baseball Heaven, and I can't emphasise enough the importance of baseball in Japan, so it's always fun to come across a baseball themed BL manga. Mamahara Eli only has a few of her works published in English, although she is quite prolific in Japan. She often draws art for novels or creates manga from previously published stories, many which are not in English yet. This story is from Blue, which was Tokyopop's BL imprint before it went under, so it is out of print and often very expensive. I got this recently for a good price because it is secondhand, but I don't mind that. I'm just happy to have a copy. She started writing this in 2004 and continued until 2006, and Blue printed it in 2010. And this is interesting because the two main characters are Uno, a pitcher, and Ogata, no, not a catcher, pun intended, but a shortstop. And Ogata is really interesting as a character because he is a gay man and he's out to his teammates, which is quite rare and refreshing, especially given the point in time when this was being written back in 2004. I think this is quite a rare thing in manga at that period of time. So I really like Mamahara Eli's style. She has a very loose style, it's quite easy to read, and I read this in half an hour gone. It was great. The next title I read for this readathon was A Strange and Mystifying Story by Tsuta Suzuki. This is a 7-volume series. It was originally published by June Manga. They published the first 3 volumes. Volume 2 is particularly difficult to get hold of at a good price, so I'd look out for that if you really desperately want it, but why bother when Sublime Manga, thank you very much, rescued the title and have finally printed all 7 volumes. I never thought that this would actually happen. I didn't think I would see the day when I would be able to read this full entire series in English. I was actually in Japan at the time when the 7th volume was printed in Japanese, so I got to buy a copy in a store in Japan, and of course not be able to read it completely. I could understand the story, I read a little bit of Japanese but not enough, so to have all 7 volumes in English as a set makes me very happy, so thank you very much Sublime Manga for printing this. If you want to print any more of Suzuki Tsuta's work, thank you very much, yes please. I really do like some of her earlier work as well. This story is full of mysticism, magic, and very much a story with three couples. The first one on the first cover is Akio Yamane, who seems to have his family's blood cursed, and he's the last in his family, so they have a tendency to get ill and die young, and so everyone thinks that their family is cursed. And in what he thinks is his final dying moments, he ends up resurrecting the family guardian spirit, which he names Sets. So the first story is mainly about this couple. There is another couple which are work colleagues of Akio. Very, very funny characters. I really like that couple the most, and they're not on, I think, any of the covers. And then the story really, the last 4 volumes, really moves towards the next couple, which is on volume 7. And we can see Master Kurayori and Tsumugi. And Master Kurayori is a guardian spirit for a different family, and Tsumugi has been brought up to be his bride, so he knows all about cooking and cleaning and looking after people. And of course he's not female, which causes a bit of an issue, but not so much in the end. The main thing about this series, and it really does shine through, is all of the author's particular likes and peculiarities of taste. She likes Osan or Oji-san. She likes old men, and she likes seeing old men in love, and she likes Neko Mimi and other animal ears, so she likes to draw that as well. So many of the characters have animal characteristics as well. It's a fantastic story, it's really great. Please go and buy it. Please pass along all your thanks, and maybe hopefully Suzuki Tsuta will get some more work published in the future. For the next title I read, it was Silver Spoon Volume 1 by Hiromu Arakawa. Of course, Hiromu Arakawa is mostly known for Full Metal Alchemist, and when Full Metal Alchemist is an amazing, epic, sweeping, I will be able to go on and on about how fantastic it is, brilliant piece. Her real love, and I think her real heart, is put into Silver Spoon. Silver Spoon, I only have volume 1 so far. I really want to get the rest of it. It's just such a fantastic story, and it feels so comforting, and I think it really speaks to something about getting back to understanding where our food comes from, how things are produced, the realities of the world. I think it's really important that people read this manga. I think it's a really fantastic manga for educational purposes. So I would actually recommend this to young readers and in schools as well. I think it would be really good if it was part of the curriculum. It follows the story of Yugo Hachiken-kun. He is a bit of a poor soul in the fact that he's been brought up in a very strict household and has only been focusing on studying, which is of course something that happens a lot in Japan. It's a very competitive place in terms of which school to get into, which is the best schools, which are the national schools and therefore doesn't cost as much, which are private and of course they cost a lot more. And he seems to have a very strict father who really expects the most and the best, and he feels the pressure, which is something I think most people can relate to. And so in the end he decides that he isn't going to go to a fancy prep school for high school, the final 3 years, and instead is going to go anywhere that has dormitories, that he can live away from home and get away from this toxic environment. So in some senses he feels like he's giving up and he's running away, and yet personally, I think it's the absolute best choice that he's made, and he goes through a lot of growth. This is just the first volume, as I've said. It was made into an anime, and also a drama as well, and I think I've watched both. It's absolutely hilarious. It's got all of Hiromu Arakawa's fabulous touches in terms of comedy. Characters are amazing. She always draws characters, creates characters that are fully rounded individuals. Especially Tamako, who is incredibly rounded and one of my favourite characters. I absolutely love. So please read this and check out Tamako. She's hilarious. Hachiken really goes through a lot of growth in this story, as I said, and it's mainly because he is the fish out of water, and it is a fish out of water story where he's in this situation and everything's new, so he questions it, and because he questions it, the people around him who have been brought up in this and it's just second nature to them, they have to start questioning it too. Like, why do we do it this way? Why is it that we choose to do things the way that we're doing them? Is there a different way? Is there a better way? And so it really creates a lot of dialogue within the story about ethics and morals and the right choice. And so he's actually a bit of a breath of fresh air for the school that he goes to as well. So it's a very uplifting and slice of life type story, and as I said, Hiromu Arakawa probably put her heart and soul into this story, so I would think if you're a fan of Fullmetal Alchemist, please read it. If you like agriculture, please read it. And if you are just wanting a nice read, a really good story with some great characters, comedy, read Silver Spoon. It's lovely. The next manga that I read was Love in Limbo Volume 1 by Haji, and it's a story about a soldier who ends up getting named Kalin or Kalin, I'm not entirely sure, and pairs up with a caretaker called Onodera Makoto and ends up in Limbo, a soldier who has lost his memories, so he doesn't know exactly who he is or what he's done, but he has flashes of memories. So he knows he's a soldier, and he knows little bits about himself, but he doesn't actually know most of it. So there is a lot of confusion for him as a character. And Makoto is the caretaker that he meets, who takes care of him and shows him where to live and then pairs up with him to do his job in Limbo, which is to be a reaper and fight the Maws. It's a very interesting story. I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit confused a lot of the time during this, but I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was funny and sweet and a nice read, and it has a bit of mystery to it. You do end Volume 1 wanting to read Volume 2. You want to know what happens next, and there is that slight sense of foreboding at the end. You're like, oh, what's going to happen? So you do become invested in the characters. It's an interesting one. I'm not entirely sure about it. I'm going to reserve judgment until Volume 2 comes out, which I will buy and read as well. But I'm not too sure about it. I do like it. I'm just a bit, I don't know. A bit. I will see in Volume 2. It was good though. The next manga that I read was What Did You Eat Yesterday, Volume 1 by Fumi Yoshinaga. This has become incredibly popular for good reason. It is Fumi Yoshinaga and she's brilliant, and she writes such fantastic characters and great dialogue that you do just instantly become invested in the characters, instantly are in their world, and this is a particularly fantastic story. It's two characters who are gay men, they live together, and it's totally normal. How fantastic. As it should be. This is the kind of story that we need to have in the world, and I absolutely love it. Volume 1 was really fun. The two characters, Shiro Kake, who's a lawyer, and Kenji Yabuki, who is a hairstylist, they basically just live their lives. And Shiro is a lawyer and is very particular about money. He's trying to save money, making sure he's not pinching the pennies, but looking after the pennies. And as the saying goes, look after the pennies and they'll look after the pounds. So it's a fantastic story about food, and so much of it is about cooking and is about the recipes. It makes you want to eat, it makes you want to cook, it makes you want to go to a mom and pop cafe or restaurant, you know, down the road and get rice and side dishes and eat all of the food that's being made. It was lovely and nostalgic for me because I have eaten quite a lot of the dishes that were being prepared, so it was nice to be able to see the process, and it really is just a story with recipes, but so full of life and full of character and yet so gentle and easygoing. And it's the dialogue and the characters that make this such a fantastic story, which of course Fumi Yoshinaga is really known for. I'm very disappointed that I did not buy this series when it first started being published. It is published by Vertical, so a lot of Vertical titles don't get a big print run, and they become more and more difficult to find. And volume 9 is notoriously difficult to find for What Did You Eat Yesterday. It generally goes for a lot of money if people are buying it at that. So I am collecting the series, but slowly and not at the cost of volume 9. So I might never get a complete set, but I am enjoying this series nonetheless. Even more so because What Did You Eat Yesterday has just had a drama made in Japan and became very, very popular, kind of in the same vein as Osan's Love, I think last year. And I think that this is a really good trend for Japan. I think it's a really good positive step that we can see the normalization of homosexual relationships and characters and people, and hopefully Japan, I think, is a fairly tolerant society overall if you look at each individual and people that I know, but as a society as a whole it's still not as accepting as it should be, and so there is work to be done, and hopefully things like a drama for What Did You Eat Yesterday is a step in the right direction. I hope it's a positive. I want to read more of this, I want to buy more of the manga, and I'd like to read, watch the series as well. So What Did You Eat Yesterday? It's really fantastic, and if you can get volume 9 for cheap, well done. The final series that I read for this readathon was With the Full Moon, volume 1 and 2 by Sanami Mato, who is best known for being the author of Fake, and this version is the newer version published by Kodansha. This has been published previously before, and then it was republished when Kodansha took over the title, and they had a reprinting and a new cover art, and I really do like the cover art. This is what makes it really fun, and even the author herself was really excited about it. So she was able to put all the characters on the cover, but make it so that when you put them together it looked like they were all in the room. She has said in the little blurb at the back about how she didn't expect it to be published again, that the publishers had gone out of print in Japan, that volume 1 had been published, and this was the third time volume 1 had been published, the second time that volume 2 had been published, and that it was all down to the fact that she was writing a new series that was a continuation of it at Full Moon, and I unfortunately did not finish at Full Moon. This is the first volume. There are 2 volumes of At Full Moon, which is a continuation of the story, and I only got about halfway through this volume for the end of the Manga Readathon. So I've almost finished this volume. The first two volumes, it follows the story of David, who is a vampire, and Mario, who is a half vampire, half werewolf, who unfortunately, when under the full moon, does not turn into a werewolf, instead turns into a beautiful woman, which is just how David likes it. So they end up getting together, even though Mario is a boy most of the time. He's a girl under the full moon. It's a funny story, it's very episodic, it generally has some sort of little story for a chapter. Something happens, it gets resolved by the end of the chapter. Something else happens, it gets resolved by the end of the next chapter. Very rarely does anything happen. The art style is very old-fashioned, very much in the vein of Fake, when Fake was published as well, so it is a little bit old-fashioned in that respect, and yet the newer version, this newer version by Kodansha, has her sort of updated art style, especially in At Full Moon. It's much more updated as well. So you can see the evolution of her art style, which is quite fun to see. It's an interesting story. It was quite difficult, it was a bit of a hard slog to be honest, because maybe it's so episodic. I just found it was a little bit difficult to keep going, and I found myself putting it down and getting distracted with social media and other things, and in the end I was really distracted, which is why At Full Moon is only half finished, and ended up being very distracted by Modao Zushi and the Chinese drama The Untamed, which I ended up watching instead of continuing with my readathon, so why I finished where I did. So not too bad. I didn't read as much as I had expected or I had hoped to be able to read in the time. I thought a full week, and I had the full week off, so I would be able to. So I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't read as much as I was going to, and that I wasn't fully taking part in the challenges and the bingo board. So the next time we have a readathon or some sort of manga readathon, I would like to do a little bit more. I'd like to be a bit more serious about it and try and get as many of the challenges completed as possible. But I'm really pleased with the amount I read, especially considering I was so distracted at the end of the week. So this is my roundup for the manga readathon.